Hello everyone, my name is Brendan Snyder. Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to Poison Album Ranking. They're one of the defining bands of the glam metal era, probably even the one that is best recognized or known for it, and they're certainly the one that most proudly wears the badge of honor for glam metal. Join me as we count down their 7 studio albums to this giant in the glam metal world. But before we get started, if you are new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please click the button. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on all that's going on in the world of music, just like this with Poison Album Ranking. So 7 studio albums to count down. Kicking things off at number 7, we've got Poisoned from 2007, 7th studio album from the band. In theory, the idea for this one made total sense. It was a solid idea. The band always did good cover songs, back in the day. So why not gather up their best cover songs, record some new ones, put it together like a greatest hits. All sounds good in theory, right? Unfortunately, though, the new cover songs that are on here don't really improve on the originals. They take the old cover songs from the previous albums and they tack them on at the end, sort of like bonus tracks instead. It just sort of seems like, for this album in particular at least, that the band was really just kind of going through the motions here. There's nothing very inspired about these cover songs. They are fun. That's about it, though. The only saving grace to this album, though, is that it does have better production than its previous album, Hollyweird, but unfortunately it is not enough to save this album, which is why it falls in last place. Coming in at number 6, Hollyweird from 2002, 6th studio album from the band. It was a reunion of their classic lineup, though gone is the big 80s production values on it. In place is more of a do-it-yourself raw version. It's feeling like a bunch of demos, really, instead of a fully hashed out group of songs. For me, the sound and feel of this album had much more to do with Bret Michaels' solo work at the time than sounding really like a brand new Poison album. Generally just a lack of cohesiveness too on the album. Both having Bret and CeCe do lead vocals really was jarring for me on this. I get the rationale behind it. It's probably what really allowed CeCe to come back and agree to do all of this. But CeCe brings in a pop punk vibe to their sound that really hadn't been there in the past, making it much more modern feeling than traditional, sounds that we knew Poison for. Also, the song Rockstar that was released as a teaser to the album is only included as a bonus track, so that one was not very well thought out in my opinion. And then after waiting a decade for a reunion here, the lead single on it is Squeezebox by The Who, a cover song. So instead of getting a brand new original written song as the kind of lead single to this thing, the prominent thing, they go with a cover song, which I just thought was really strange. So at every turn on this album here, it just seemed to have a bunch of misguided moves on it. And as much as I really, really want to love this album, it just falls short for me, which is why it lands at number 6. Coming in at number 5, Crack a Smile and More from 2000, 5th studio album from the band. It was originally intended for release in 1996, but the label shelved it in favor of releasing a greatest hits album instead. But once they did decide to release this, to make it more of an incentive to go against all the bootleg versions that had been out there in the market, they tacked onto it 8 bonus tracks, and for me that really took away from it being able to stand on its own as an official album release. It became more of a compilation of things than an album in its own right. The material, though, is really good. Case in point, the 2 songs that they chose to put on greatest hits when the album hadn't even come out at the time, Sexual Thing and Lay Your Body Down, both absolutely good songs. If you don't know this album, but you know those songs, the rest of this is equally as good as that. This was a return to the party sound that was missing from Native Tongue. Their new guitarist, Blue Saraceno, was really great for the band, in my opinion. He brought back what was missing. It was that old sound and style. You know, that's what had been missing from Native Tongue. So he returns that to the band on this release. And, you know, with all that said, though, if the album had come out in 1996, it probably wouldn't have done much better than it did when it came out in 2000, which is a real shame, though, because this album here is a fantastic album, and it would have been great if it could have stood on its own and been given its own shot. But it is a solid, worthy album, and I do think it is worthy of ranking one position higher than the Reunion album for just that reason. Coming in at number 4, Native Tongue from 1993, fourth studio album from the band. First to feature new guitarist Richie Kotzen in the lineup, who is taking over and replacing original guitarist C.C. DeVille. And while Kotzen is a shredder, capable of recreating C.C. DeVille's guitar style and histrionics and all that sort of stuff, they chose to go in a different direction for the band, bolstering their soulful, blues rock undertones that had always been there on previous albums. This whole album, though, did take on a different approach. It had much more of a clean sound to it than the distorted party rock tones of previous albums. There was more acoustic instrumentation throughout this one, and much more introspection in the lyrics on this. But the maturing of sound that was on this during the rise of grunge and alternative rock, I do think is probably what saved the band. But of course, it became a double-edged sword, because while the album was successful, spawning the hit song Stand, which was a number 50 single on the Billboard Hot 100, the album also being certified gold for 500,000 sales, so really good there. It did alienate longtime fans, so making it hard for the band to strike a balance and just leaving a really great album to not be given its proper due. All right, coming in at number 3, Look What the Cat Dragged In from 1986, debut studio album from the band. And while it's more raw sounding than later albums, the youthfulness and energy on this one is just unparalleled and unmatched, I think, on other albums. It is a pure party from start to finish on this thing. The whole thing is hopping and bopping all the way through. Everything on this album would be done to better effect on later albums, but you can't deny the hits that are on this and that feeling from those hits, that party vibe all the way through on this. Cry Tough, I Want Action, Look What the Cat Dragged In, Talk Dirty to Me, probably their biggest song. I know they get more, hits and spins for their ballad, Every Rose Has Its Thorn, but, they've always closed with that song. It just brings down the house. But in retrospect, I do think the album lacked some depth, which is why it brings it in, peaking here at number 3. Coming in at number 2, we have Flesh and Blood from 1990, third studio album from the band. For me, this is where everything finally came together for the band. This album here, it takes everything. It takes the party rock vibe of the first album, the lyrical depth and different sounds that had been explored on the second album, and it develops it with that soulful blues rock undertones to really great effect on this one here. And while I enjoyed the hits that are on this album, in particular, Ride the Wind, that was my favorite track, at least of the hits off of here, it was the album's deep cuts that made this album near perfect, in my opinion. Valley of Lost Souls, Let It Play, Come Hell or High Water, or Life Loves a Tragedy, which is probably my favorite tune off this album. But what holds it back, though, is the lack of consistency on this one here. The album moves through a number of styles, and there's some interludes that I think break up the flow on here. And while none of this really overly hurts the album at all, it does prevent it from being consistently strong, and why it is just shy of the top spot, coming in at number 2. All right, and in the number 1 spot here, I don't think this is any surprise, Open Up and Say Ah from 1988, second studio album from the band, building on everything that was great from the debut, taking it to a whole new level here, especially in terms of the production value on it. The album is again a full party from start to finish, on songs like Nothing But a Good Time, which is probably the ultimate party song. Good Love, which just has that amazing harmonica playing on it. Your Mama Don't Dance, which was an unlikely cover song that became a hit for them. But the album is also tempered with some lyrical depth on songs like Fallen Angel and Every Rose Has Its Thorn, the mega ballad. So making all of this album more than it appears to be. But it's the album's consistency that works so well here. Each song on here is just solid, building to the same effect throughout the album here, which for me puts this album over the top. Of the original 10-track album here, this one here just defines the glam metal era, helping to bring it in at the #1 spot for Poison album ranking. All right, there you go. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to check the description for links to related videos, and certainly please share this video out on social media if you enjoyed it. Help spread the word that way. I would also appreciate that. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Leave your comments. Let me know what's going on. Take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.